Hi there, I'm SmallAnt1, and welcome to my movement guide for Super Mario Odyssey speedrunning. In this video, I'll be explaining everything you'll need to know regarding techniques currently being used, from the basics, such as diving onto Cappy, to more advanced things like buffered spin jump ground pounds. There's timestamps in the video description if you're wanting to skip to a particular section, but there's a lot to cover, so let's get started. I'm going to start off here with the basic jump. There isn't anything too special about this one, aside from the fact that if Mario is moving at a certain speed, then a regular jump will maintain his momentum going forwards, such as after a dive or releasing a roll. A double jump is slightly higher than a single jump. It is performed when jumping during a short time period after landing from a previous jump. The previous jump can be anything except for a side flip or a triple jump. This means that even things like cap jumps and ground pound jumps are able to initiate a double jump. A triple jump is the highest jump in the game. It's executed by jumping after a double jump while moving at a speed that is at least equal to Mario's normal walking speed. Triple jumps maintain momentum, same as single and double jumps, which make them incredibly versatile. Something to note about this jump is if you attempt to turn before the triple jump, then it most likely will not work. One way to counteract this is to allow Mario to take a few steps before doing the final jump of the triple. Another useful one is the spin jump. To start a spin jump, you must first spin by rotating the control stick in at least 2 full circles. The interesting thing about spinning is that it can be buffered. You can start the spinning of the control stick during a cutscene, or during a dive, or doing a roll cancel, among other things. This in itself isn't particularly useful, but the thing that makes spin jumping so useful is the fact that you can instantly ground pound after a spin jump. These buffered spin jump ground pounds, or bumps for short, I'll be talking about later. 2 jumps that are used in nearly identical situations are ground pound jumps and backflips. Ground pound jumps are done by jumping after a ground pound, and backflips are done by jumping from a crouch. Backflips don't get as much height as ground pound jumps, but they are a little bit faster, so at any point in a run where a ground pound jump is performed, it's most likely that a backflip would actually be a more optimal option, with a few exceptions. Side flips are done when Mario walks in one direction, then immediately turns in the opposite direction and jumps. Side flips give a decent amount of height, slightly less than a backflip, but they aren't used too much in runs, so I'm just going to move on to the long jump. Long jumps give the most speed compared to any other jump. This, however, does not mean they are always the most optimal jump to use. At the beginning of a long jump, Mario is set to a certain speed. This speed, unfortunately, is often slower than Mario's speed preceding the long jump, meaning that long jumping actually slows you down. Rolling is faster than a long jump, so if Mario were to long jump out of a full speed roll, he would lose speed. As a result, if Mario is moving at these speeds, then there is almost always a better alternative to a long jump, whether it be a triple jump out of the roll or just a well-timed boost. The last 2 jumps involve Cappy, a cap jump and a returned cap jump. A returned cap jump happens when Mario jumps just as Cappy is returning to him. This gives a surprising amount of height, nearly as much as a backflip, but as far as I know, there aren't really any jumps in the any percent route that absolutely require the use of the returned cap jump, although some places are made easier with it. The one thing to remember is that if your cap returns the moment Mario is doing a certain jump, then it just eats the jump and does the returned cap jump instead, which can be pretty frustrating. The final type of jump is the cap jump. There are 2 variations of it, a grounded cap jump, or a vault, and an aerial cap jump. A grounded cap jump is done when Cappy is thrown and held on the ground. Mario then walks or rolls onto him. A grounded cap jump gives the same amount of height as a backflip while maintaining horizontal momentum. Grounded cap jumps aren't used too frequently in runs, but there are a few good examples, and it's likely that you'll see it more in the future. In contrast to the grounded cap jump, aerial cap jumps are used nearly everywhere. Mario just jumps or dives onto Cappy in the air, and just to be thorough, you dive by pressing a Z button and then either X or Y. There aren't too many details to remember about this one, but the most important thing to know is that once you throw Cappy in the air, if you wait for Mario to do the full spin before diving, Mario will land on the center of Cappy, which gets slightly more height. That's it for the jump section. Here's a quick comparison of jump height so you can see the height differences of all the jumps. Next, I'll cover throwing Cappy. Cappy throws are fairly basic, just press X, Y, or give the controller a shake to throw. You can hold X or Y to hold Cappy in place after a throw. Shaking the controller gives some extra options though. By shaking upwards, Mario will perform an upwards Cappy throw, and by shaking sideways, you can get Cappy to spin. Shaking the controller downwards will throw Cappy downwards, or just a bit further than a regular throw. This isn't used in runs too often, as it is impossible to perform a down throw on a Pro Controller. After throwing Cappy, shaking the controller will get Cappy to home in on the closest enemy or capturable object. And a final note about cap throws is that if the jump button is pressed when Cappy returns in the air, then you will do a kick. This stalls Mario in the air for a moment, and is really only useful for getting back on the Mecha Brutal, as far as I'm aware. Now I'll move on to rolling, the fastest horizontal method of travel. When in a speedrun, your goal is to basically roll as much as possible while jumping over any obstacles which get in the way of rolling. Rolling can be achieved in 4 ways: after a long jump, after a dive, from a crouch, or after ground pounding. These are pretty self-explanatory. You can accelerate a roll in 2 ways, with the cap throw buttons, X and Y, or shaking the controller. If you shake the controller, the roll will be much faster. While doing these boosts, the roll will not be able to turn as easily, and knowing this, you can have Mario roll straight across slopes with relative ease, as long as the roll boosts are timed properly. If you try to roll from a regular ground pound too early, you will instead do a downward cap throw. Here's a comparison for the speed for starting a roll. You can see that the fastest way of accelerating is done by doing a bump roll. Bump meaning buffered spin jump ground pound, which I will talk about soon. There are 3 ways to end a roll: letting go of the Z buttons, long jumping, and roll cancelling. I guess technically bonking is 2, but I don't like to think about that. Releasing a roll normally allows Mario to sprint and keep his momentum for a short amount of time after the roll. The second way is to long jump. Now, you're not going to often want to use the long jump for the purpose of actually jumping horizontally. Long jumping from a roll is mostly used to get a bit of extra height when rolling under a moon, or to throw Cappy and then ground pound sometimes. The final way to end a roll is roll cancelling. To roll cancel, you press the cap throw button and the jump button at the same time. This throws Cappy and will cancel Mario's roll. If you point the control stick 90 degrees of the direction traveling during a roll cancel, without letting the control stick go to a neutral position, then Mario's momentum will be transferred to that direction. This is particularly useful for quickly turning or getting around corners. Roll cancelling is a key to one of the trickiest techniques in Super Mario Odyssey: instant roll cancelling. An instant roll cancel is exactly as it sounds. It's starting a roll and then instantly cancelling it. This technique has 2 primary purposes: for accelerating to max speed very quickly in a small space, and for clipping into walls. The instant roll cancel is used in Flower Skip, where Mario ground pounds, and instant roll cancels, turns around, and triple jumps across an enormous gap. Used into clipping into the wall behind the Sphinx in Sand Kingdom, clipping into the wall in Snow Kingdom, just as some examples. To instantly roll cancel, you need to make Mario do a ground pound. Continue holding the Z button, and wait a moment to make sure you don't accidentally throw Cappy. Then, press a cap throw button, and as soon as possible, press another cap throw button and a jump button at the same time. There are 2 different ways to more easily do this: pressing the X button and then rolling your thumb down on top of Y and B. The other method is to press the Y button, then roll your thumb right to the X and B button. This motion is very fast, and it should almost feel as if you're pressing all 3 buttons at the same time. You can check if you're doing this correctly by facing a wall and ground pound facing it, and performing the instant roll cancel. If Mario bonks, you press the buttons too slowly. If Mario jumps a little, then you didn't press the jump and cap throw buttons simultaneously. Here's what a proper roll cancel against a wall should look like. I'm not going to cover exactly how to do roll cancel clips here, but each has its own specific setup, and that'll be in another video. Another important technique to know about is roll cancelling and keeping Mario's momentum going forwards. As I said before, a roll cancel can only maintain Mario's momentum if he turns about 90 degrees from the direction of travel. However, this turning can be counteracted with a well-timed jump and properly aiming the control stick. To maintain momentum in a forwards direction after a roll cancel, you do a roll cancel as normal, as if you were going to be turning 90 degrees, but the moment you roll cancel and begin to turn, jump and point the control stick back in the direction you were traveling. If done correctly, all of your momentum will continue to be in the forwards direction. This is useful as it can allow Mario to fit in an extra roll boost in places where they otherwise wouldn't work. One more recently discovered technique is dive vaulting. A dive vault is when you throw Cappy, dive, hit the ground, and roll boost just as Mario is vaulting off of Cappy. Vaults keep horizontal momentum, which make them very useful in areas where you want Mario to jump after getting up on a ledge. The trick to a dive vault is during the dive, you have to pull back on the control stick just long enough so Mario just hits the ground before hitting the cap, but still rolls. Also, the moment Mario hits the ground, pressing X or Y is necessary to boost and get speed. When done properly, the yellow around Mario will appear and the vault animation will play. If Mario does an aerial Cappy jump with no yellow, then the control stick was not held backwards for long enough. If Mario does a vault with no yellow appearing, then a boost was either timed much too early or a little too late. If Mario boosts, but aerial cap jumps, then the boost was just done too early, as Mario is technically in the air from the tiny jump Mario gets when roll boosting. The timing for this is pretty tricky, and it's hard to describe how to properly do it, but it's just a matter of messing around and practicing until it becomes consistent. An interesting thing you can do while Mario is in the air is a technique called vectoring. Anytime Mario is in the air moving in a certain direction, if he turns, then he will gain speed. This effect is most noticeable in Moon Kingdom, but every single jump Mario performs is actually affected by vectoring. So anytime you find Mario jumping a long distance, you could try turn away from the direction Mario will be jumping, and turning towards where you want to go, and it will be slightly faster. The last technique I'm going to cover is by far the coolest in my opinion. I'll be talking about buffered spin jump ground pounds, which I'll be calling bumps for short. As I said previously, bumps are done by spinning the control stick in 2 full rotations during a cutscene, a dive, the end of a roll, roll cancelling, etc. The instant the animations for these end, Mario is able to spin jump and immediately ground pound. A special characteristic of a spin jump ground pound is that Cappy cannot be thrown out of it. This means you can instantly go into a max speed roll. Now, since rolling from crouching is nearly the same speed in most situations, there are only a few places where bump rolling is beneficial. On the top of the tower in Metro, a bump roll to roll cancel allows you to get around the tower very quickly. Also, after the archway Moon and Sand, basically just anywhere you wouldn't be able to roll and do 3 boosts afterwards, most often off of ledges. The most useful characteristic of bumps are definitely just the instant ground pounding. Mario is able to instantly ground pound any buried moon, getting them quite a bit faster than a regular ground pound. You can also jump from a bump, which is actually faster than a backflip by a small amount, so anywhere that you can bump jump instead of a backflip would be advisable once you're consistent at them. Some final things that aren't really related to movement, but are good to do for speedrunning, is to have your camera sensitivity set to very high, and the motion sensitivity set to high. This makes it much easier to move the camera once you get used to it. Also, the fastest language for most categories is Japanese, which is in the language settings, 4th from the bottom, and looks like this. Japanese has the least amount of text, which means you'll scroll through less of it on a run, and save a bit of time. There is a Super Mario Odyssey speedrunning Discord, which has a large portion of the community. There's always some new discovery, or video, or helpful person answering questions. Feel free to join, there's a link in the description below. Combining all these techniques can lead to some very impressive movement in many sections of the game, allowing Mario to move from moon to moon very quickly. Super Mario Odyssey is still a fairly new game, so there is sure to be much more to be discovered in the future. But for now, this should have been everything you'll need. Thank you for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, I'm Smallat1, and I'll see you next time.